It's a little weirder to be in front of a camera again than I thought it would be, but it's also actually pretty exciting. Even though what I'm about to talk about and share a story with you guys is potentially not super exciting, at least at first, but it's really exciting for me to finally be back here because I didn't know how I was going to return to this space. And that's kind of what this hopefully short little update vlog is going to be about. It's going to be about explaining where I've been for the last few months because I have behaved in a way Siri has never behaved in the last 10 years of building our community on YouTube together. And it will hopefully give some of you guys insight into maybe how to handle stress, how to think about yourself in terms of what productivity addiction can actually do to your life, and what burnout actually is defined as, and what it actually means in ways that mean something, what self-care actually means in ways that is effective to understand instead of foo-foo-y and trying to sell you bath bombs. And hopefully this will just kind of like lay a smooth foundation down where I can walk forward with my head held high and a good, happy heart in creating more adventures and evolving as myself with you guys. That is a pretty high bar I just set for this video. Darn it! Alright, let's try again. Basically, guys, this is going to be the story about where I have been for the last several months. It's going to be the science behind why I've been where I've been, and it'll be a little bit of an insight into my hopes for the evolution of where I want to go from here. And to begin with the story, I have been completely and totally and absolutely burned out. And I thought I knew what that meant before. I've used that phrase before. I have said, oh yeah, I'm feeling a little burned out. I have tried to explain to myself and to you guys periods of time where I started feeling more cynical, where I felt exhausted, where I just couldn't keep up with anything, where I felt like I was just constantly disappointing with myself with not being able to complete my projects as, oh, that must be what being burned out feels like. I had no idea that that's not actually what it feels like. That was stressed. To put it into the metaphor that has helped me rebuild my life in the last few weeks, being truly burned out is like a level 10 earthquake hits your mental, emotional, and physical life and just wrecks everything. It is, as my beloved husband Chips explains it, a earth-shattering, world-ending kind of event that you have no idea where it came from because it came out of the blue. You can point to different pressure points in your life that added up to the tectonic pressure, but truly hitting a stage of burnout is not really something you can see coming when you're in the thick of it, and it just makes everything go kaboom. So I have been burned out, truly 10 out of 10 burned out the last few months, and I was completely taken off guard because even if you can try to predict earthquakes, they're always a surprise. And there were a lot of scientific reasons, which we'll talk about, for getting to that point that I actually think are the most important part of this little update vlog, and will hopefully be a great reminder to myself in the future and some great advice for any of you guys who are really trying to figure out how to balance all the pressures in your life a little bit better. But for my personal story, basically the last few months have been me trying to come out of that earthquake event. And what happens when you get hit with that level 10 out of 10 true scale burnout, where all of these under the surface subconscious pressures just pushed closer and closer, and the tectonic plates of your life were shoving up against each other and you didn't even realize it, and then you added a little bit too much pressure and kapoosh, is afterward you just kind of sit in shock. And you sleep a ridiculous amount of hours every day. You try to sit down and do the things that you normally do, and you find yourself staring at a blank screen for hours before you get up and eat another protein bar because you don't remember how to make food. And if you are in a really lucky position like I am, you lean back on your emergency relief system, the Red Cross and heroes who come into your life, as my husband had, and as all of the systems of support I had built for myself had. I had healthy food to eat. Everything was still safe. I had fresh water. I have a happy life here in my home. And so burnout is different than depression in a lot of ways because I didn't feel true despair. I didn't feel like the world was a bad place. I just couldn't remember how to do anything. I just couldn't remember how to make my infrastructure of my life function. And I just couldn't seem to have any go. I could sit down in front of my computer and tell myself to get back to work, and then it would be 9 hours later, and I would have not even scrolled on any sort of social media. It would have just been time passed. I needed so much more sleep because the infrastructure of my physical health had been completely blown out of the water. I needed so much just maintenance that I had no idea I had been neglecting for so long. So basically that sounds really bad, but I want to really reiterate that this is very different from when you're depressed, because I didn't despair. I was just really kind of cynical. I just couldn't remember what the point of life was, because when you're staring at the landscape of your life and you're like, why does nothing work anymore? Why does my brain not work? Why can I not have the energy to do anything? You're more frustrated than anything with burnout, I think. And when you're truly depressed, you're in despair. You can be very cynical with burnout, and you can feel extremely nihilistic. I woke up every single day feeling nihilistic and made myself rewatch the Kierkegaard optimistic nihilism over and over again to remember that there was a lot of optimism still in life. I couldn't feel it and I couldn't really act on it. But I could remember that it existed. So I don't want to spook people and act like I've just been in a black hole of dark, deep, evil depression consuming me, because I wasn't, and I was in a safe place, and I was surrounded by people who loved me, and I had my 34th birthday. I even had a pre-scheduled beach vacation with my husband and my sister-in-law, and we had a great time. But I just couldn't do anything. And that's what burnout is when you wake up one day and you suddenly realize that you have no energy, and no matter how hard you try to function and actually do the things of life, it's just like your computer that won't turn on anymore. You can press the power button all you want, but nothing's there, and it makes no sense. It's a very frustrating and surreal experience. And that's where I was, and that's kind of my story. Don't worry, because there's a third part to this, which is my evolution, where I'm at now, and I would not be here if I haven't been able to rebuild enough of my life to be right here. I did not want to start talking to you guys about this until I had some answers for myself, because that's really important just for me, but also because I wanted to lay that foundation out for you guys too. Because I don't think you have to be a YouTuber who runs her own business and who's the main breadwinner for her family to get burned out. I think that it is going to be a like international phenomena over the last couple of years, because here's the science behind the burnout as I'm going to define it. It's a result of pressure that builds up in your life, and it builds up and builds up and builds up and doesn't have any release. And over the last couple of years, I think everybody has experienced some degree of that. And for some people, they've been able to relieve that pressure and not have the Richter scale of a personal earthquake build and build under the surface. Some people have been able to have systems in place or just not as much pressure, and so they're feeling a lot more stable. And for other people, it was really important as part of all of this for me to acknowledge that, oh, you know, feeling a little trapped at home and like I can't see my family when they're sick on the other side of the country. That was adding pressure that I just didn't acknowledge the whole time under the surface too. So sharing what I'm going to define the science of burnout as, and how I am going to forever treat myself and manage my life from this point forward, is something I hope will be of use to some of you guys, which is the whole point of this video. Because otherwise I would just kind of sneak back in and be like, hi guys, I was having a hard time, so let's start playing Pokemon again, don't mind me. So this is actually what I really want to share with you, and I don't know if I'm going to do a great job of it, but I'm going to try. I really truly feel that burnout is something we can all experience now when all of that pressure starts building. And there's lots of videos out there that tell you about how it's all about workplace stuff. It makes it sound like something that belongs to C-suite like techies who only work like at computers and just have a very busy life. But I have seen it when I used to work as a certified nurse assistant and in my nursing programs with caregivers. I have seen it just with parents that I have been friends with who experience it a lot with children, because that's just a constant adding of pressure all the time. That's very unrelenting, even though it's something they cherish and it's wonderful. It's something, burnout is something I think can happen to everybody. And I think not acknowledging that and make it sounding like it's something that belongs to people who go on yoga retreats and like run a startup makes it so that we all do a disservice of understanding what kind of stress everybody shares in their life. So that's why I want to share it with everybody. How I define burnout now is, like I said, the addition of that pressure until you hit a point where there is a earthquake in your life. And sometimes the earthquake might be very mild. It might just be a level 3. Sometimes it might be 7, and that really sucks, but a couple weeks of relaxing helps you out with that. And sometimes you might hit level 10 and you just wrecked the infrastructure of your life, and to get back on your feet, you have to rebuild and everything has to be different from now on. And that's unfortunately the level I got at. And here's how I feel like that happens when you combine that with productivity. Here's the science behind it that I have spent the last several years actually researching, and I'm going to sum up super simplified because one of the things that frustrates me when we talk about stress, anxiety, languishing, burnout, all of these phrases that you've probably seen popping up in little clicky news articles and repeating themselves back and forth like an echo chamber that doesn't really help you get anywhere. They're great for all of that, but I think it can just be simplified down to burnout is pressure added into your life when you have a lot of stress and you don't mitigate that stress by easing an equal by releasing an equal amount of pressure. If you're just adding the pressure and you're not releasing an equal or greater amount of pressure, eventually you will get burnout. And forget the forest fire and candle analogies that people use for burnout. It's an earthquake. It's tectonic pressure that's just under the surface of your life that just gets added to. And one of the tricky things about that is it's not just stressful situations that add to it. Pressure can get added into our life even from things we love and enjoy. For instance, this week, the whole week, my husband and I have had the opportunity to host a bunch of our family. My sister-in-law came over and we played Outer Wilds for like 4 days straight for hours so we could figure out the Echoes of the Eye expansion. It was awesome. It was great. We had lots of popcorn, lots of snacks. We spooked ourselves silly because, oh my gosh, Echoes of the Eye is an amazing game. But I'm an introvert who really likes to have a lot of control over her time. And so even though there were all these like pressure relieving moments of hanging out with my sister-in-law and eating yummy tasty like popcorn with nutritional yeast, if you're not putting nutritional yeast on your popcorn, I don't know what you're doing. There was still a bit of pressure added in from having somebody over at our house and being a host and trying to make sure the house is nice and clean and cleaning up afterward, and a bit of pressure added in from the trade-off of, okay, I hung out all day, but I didn't get these other things I kind of wanted to get done. So I think in the end, even though it's an experience I loved and I wanted it, I think there was still a net benefit or a net increase of pressure, even though it was a great fun thing. And now if I want to kind of relax from a week of an introvert hosting like friends and family, I need to go ahead and find ways to relieve some of the tension and pressure in my life. Or else, if I ignore it and say, no, that was a fun event, I shouldn't have any kind of pressure in my life from it, if I try to ignore that, guess what? The tectonic pressure is still there. And if I go on with my day and just say, oh, that's silly, it was something I had fun with, so it shouldn't be something that added any kind of pressure into my life, then I'm going to keep the pressure there and I will have ignored it and I'll pretend it's not there just because my ego says that was fun, so it shouldn't have any kind of heavier repercussions in my life. And then I'll start piling more stress onto my life in the form of to-do list or productivity that I expect of myself. And then the pressure is going to keep building and building. And then it may not be this week, it may not even be this month, but at some point, because I didn't manage how much tension I actually felt, truly felt, even if it was from good things, I'm gonna have another earthquake instead of being able just to settle everything and release the pressure. So why does that happen? And here's some of the science behind that. The science behind why I feel like my definition of what burnout is and that pressure happens is related to when we focus on a task we want to get done. And that task, when you put down something on your to-do list and you say, I want to get this done, your mind is an amazing, powerful, biochemically driven organ that is going to try to find a way to help you get that task done. So when I put something down on my to-do list, it goes ahead and releases a bunch of stress chemicals around that to-do list to start prompting me to focus on it, to pay attention to that thing so that I get it done. When our body releases stress hormones, it's not always a bad thing. Releasing dopamine, releasing a bit of cortisol, releasing all of these hormones to kind of get you up out of your chair and direct you to go to get something done is how we get things done in life. And so every time you put down something on your to-do list, this is just, again, my vastly abridged version of pulling all of the science I've learned into something easy and digestible to understand. Just keep that in mind. But every time you put something on your to-do list, you are releasing some stress chemicals around it, because that is what helps you biochemically pay attention to something. So that's not a bad thing in theory, but that means it adds a bit of pressure into your life. And so every time you put that to-do list item there, there's a biochemical rise in the stress hormones that you have in your body. And if that's just one item, probably not that bad, just very mild little pressure, you're fine, maybe. Depends on the item and how much stress it releases. But if you have a whole bunch of things on your to-do list, like I have historically done, if you have a list of like 24 things that you're trying to get done every day, even if you tell yourself, oh, it's just 10 minutes of wanikani to practice my Japanese. Oh, it's just a 10-minute brisk walk around the park. Oh, it's just like watering my plants. Every single one of those items will, when you have them to focus on, are focused on by stress hormones. So you're increasing the stress levels biochemically in your body to match trying to keep up with that productivity checklist that you've created. That's not a bad thing, because you need that to get you up and to get those things done. Where that's a bad thing is where you don't have a way to turn off that stress response, where you don't check off the list, the productivity checklist, and feel the release of having done that, where you don't have a way to go, it's done. And so having things on, I'm not trying to say having a to-do list or having things on your to-do list is a bad thing. What's a bad thing is when you have a whole bunch of things left over at the end of the day, or when you check something off on your list, but you don't biochemically and emotionally feel like, okay, I have taken care of that task. For instance, if you are studying for an exam and you know you have an exam at the end of the semester, you might have read chapter 3 out of 10. But you still know that the exam is going to be looming. You guys know that feeling, right? Where you're like, okay, I did the thing that my checklist said was done for the day, but you still feel stressed about the exam. There's still underlying pressure there about the exam lurking ahead in the future, right? And you don't feel better about it until the exam is over, because that's the moment when you can actually formally end worrying about the exam and end studying, and you don't have to carry the stress hormones around it anymore to make you focus on it. And when you have a bunch of open-ended productivity things that just go on forever and ever and ever, and you don't really have a sense of completion with them, and every day you wake up and you have a whole new list to just keep working on more and more and more things, you're keeping all of those biochemical markers of stress that say, pay attention to this, filling your body. And then when you do that long enough, you trigger your body's fight and flight response, or it goes, oh, there's a lot of stress floating around in here. There must be something going on. Do we have a lion behind us? Do you see a lion? There might be a lion. I think there's a lion. Because what other reason could our body have all of this stress for? If you have all these things to focus on, do you see where the cycle starts building up? It's not bad to have all these things to focus on if every time you add something onto that list and you raise those stress hormones, you have a clear and obvious way to go, okay, this is completed and I can let go of this. And the moment you start telling yourself, I can let go of this, is when you start giving yourself serotonin. And it's when you start feeling you have enough, that you are enough, that you are safe, that this task is completed. I have watered the darn plants. I do not have to think about that anymore. It comes down to mindset too. If you can finish checking off water the darn plants on your to-do list, and you can truly just let go of that task, then the serotonin is released and it helps to mitigate all of those stress hormones and start bringing them down a bit. And if you have the mindset where you think, okay, I've watered the plants, oh, but I have to do it again in 3 more days, and what if I haven't watered them enough, and I think that one looks like it's dying. Is my orchid blooming yet? I'm pretty sure the one on the deck is dead. If you keep that to-do list task open in your head like that, because you don't have a sense of completion around it, then you opened it with all this cortisol, dopamine, the stress hormones, and you never closed it with the serotonin that comes from feeling like you have completed and accomplished something. So you just left all that stress hormone in your body biochemically. It comes down to mindset that way. Two people can have the same task on their to-do list, and the person who's able to go, nope, it's done, it's taken care of, my Google Calendar has water plants in the next 3 days, that's when I'll think about it again. Or if, you know, something knocks over the plants or the cat gets into it or something like that. But if that person is able to water the plants and just be like, I'm done, and move on with their life, there's the happy serotonin capping off your task, your productivity you're trying to do. And release. The pressure flattens out in your life. You don't have that tectonic tension. If you are this kind of mindset that has a task on your to-do list and you say, okay, you know, watered the plants, but I have to worry about them again, or yeah, I read the chapter for my exam, but oh my gosh, I know that I'm gonna have to read the chapter next week, and I haven't done my flashcards, and I should probably do some flashcards, and I'm pretty sure I should put in a study group, but how am I gonna have a study group when I'm also worried about coronavirus? And now I have tagged it up with worrying about like how to socialize safely, which is an open-ended cortisol situation. Then you just accelerated all of those biochemical markers of stress, and at the end of the day your body's going to be like, there's definitely a lion. And when there is a fight and flight response, then your body starts getting inflamed and you start carrying around all of this tension. You start becoming more hyper focused. When your fight and flight response gets turned on, you become hyper focused on the things that are causing you that stress. You can't see the world around you because there's a lion somewhere. What other reason could there be for all of these biochemical markers to be so high in your body? And so when you start hyper-focusing because you're fight and flight responding on all of the things on your to-do list, because you're so stressed and your cortisol levels and your dopamine levels and everything else that normally are supposed to help you get things done are too high and kept and maintained too high, then what ends up happening is you can't see the world around you. And that is bad for lots of reasons, but also because it makes you hyper-focused on the things that you get done. And if you get them done and can cap it off with a feeling of accomplishment, satiety, completion, you're enough, like the task is finished, then you can probably go ahead and start ramping things down. But if you're hyper-focused and your mindset is still caught up in, I've gotten it done, but not really, because there's always more to do, then you're still trapped in that fight and flight, high stress little box. And when you're in that box, your whole way of how your memory works, of how your attention is processed, of what feels important, of how fast your heart beats, of how inflamed your whole body becomes, how your gut functions, how you digest your food, how you sleep, all of those things when you're in this focused state of fight and flight focus changes. And it makes it harder and harder and harder to feel safe. The more you're here and the more you're here with all of your stress hormones, the less safe you feel. And one of the key things you need to cap things off with your happy serotonin is to feel safe. If you want to send your buddy out to go ahead and help you complete this stress cycle to get things done in your life, you need to be able to feel safe. And when you are in this focused mode, you can't see the safety because you're looking for the lion. And that is how you never start ramping down the stress, and you just keep adding to the pressure, and then eventually you get an earthquake and you burn out and you can't function anymore. And the very infrastructure of your life is broken somehow. And your health, because you've kept yourself in this inflamed and agitated state, sometimes for months or years at a time, you turn around and your health is not what it should be. That's part of the infrastructure of your life being wrecked. You end up blowing up at work, or you end up saying something horrible to a kid or a person that you really care about. That's what earthquake burnouts can do. They can wreck the infrastructure of your life, because in the end it comes down to this mindset of having not only so many things on your to-do list, but not finding ways to relieve that pressure. And here's just my last little bit on the science behind it. And again, I abridged this in huge amounts to try to make these metaphors help make more sense. The biggest thing that really gets my goat angry about the conversations about burnout is the cop-out answer of just relax, take some days off work, just rest. You know, you might have to take longer off work and rest longer than you thought, but in the end, with your support system and a little bit of TLC, some nice self-care nights, you know, watching a Netflix show, you should be fine. No. What? No. I always get so mad when I see those self-care tips online, because what the absolute heck are they supposed to mean other than buy my affiliated bath bomb in the video description? What? Okay, that's a big pet peeve of mine. Here is my answer that has transformed my life and made it so I can be here right now looking forward to my life again, on how to actually relieve that pressure. It's anything that actually makes you personally feel like the tension and the pressure is going away. For me, that is never Netflix. For me, that is never bath bombs. I hate baths. They're like bathing in your own swamp water. No thank you. For me, they are going on walks outside. Cliche, but true. For me, they're playing Slither.io. You didn't know that about me, now you do. For me, they are taking pictures of flowers. For me, relieving pressure might look really weird to other people, because it might look like, okay, I had a day of socializing and now I'm done. Or it might look like, I just want to play a game that means a lot to me, even if I know it's not going to be popular on my channel. Basically, forget all that advice on like just rest, just do self-care, and you won't get burned out. The key should be finding whatever it is that helps you to undo the pressure in your life. And that's going to look completely unique to each person. And sometimes that's going to look like completing the thing on your list. And that's kind of the key though, right? Coming back to what we talked about earlier, sometimes to relieve that pressure, the things that you want to do in your life that add stress into your life, you can either get rid of them completely and just yeet them out the window and say, I'm never doing that again, I'm going to quit this job, which that's another thing in the articles, like, who just quits their job? Who can do that? Like, I don't know anybody who can do that. No. But it might look like, okay, maybe I am going to, what's a more realistic answer? Maybe I'm not gonna volunteer at the shelter like twice a week anymore. I'm just gonna do it twice a month because I still want to, but it's adding too much pressure into my life to have that much time aside. So that might look like taking that self-care step for you. And sometimes it might be, okay, I actually need to go ahead and I actually need to finish, here's a boring thing, finish my taxes. You might have that as something that's putting cortisol and stress into your life, and to get through it might not be watching Netflix and eating ice cream, it might be actually completing the task makes the pressure go away. That doesn't mean you should grit your teeth and push through things all the time. That might be something to do now and then, but you don't want to add it so much that you push yourself over the edge into an earthquake. There's a time and place for that though. So I just want to note that, because there are some things that we have in our life that add stress into our life that are there for a reason, because on the other side of it, we want a better life for ourselves. But I really hope that you'll remember to support yourself by having all these other ways where you can try to relieve pressure. Like if you're doing a huge project, maybe you will like ask your friend to help you do some meal prep with you. In order to be able to, like I ask my husband, like, yo, could you make dinner tonight? Because I'm really stressed about work today and have a lot of things I want to get done, and I need to relieve some of that pressure. So that is what actual self-care looks like to me. It's not gonna look the same for any two people. And sometimes it might be quitting your job. Sometimes it might be watching shows. But it should be what helps you actually decrease tension. And sometimes it might look like work. And sometimes it might look like changing how your life is set up. And sometimes it might look like playing Slither.io for 20 minutes and then feeling my shoulders relax. It depends on each of us. So I've given up on this being a short video, and I'm going to try to wrap up with my third thing of how I feel I'm taking all of this science that I have learned and condensed down into a few useful, easy metaphors based around tectonic pressure in my life. That's actually something my husband Chips and I are starting to use between each other. Is when I feel like something is adding a lot of pressure into my life, I'll say, okay, this is bringing pressure in. I want to do these things to help relieve pressure. And a very important key of that is that often that does not involve running away from the thing done. It might involve like looking at an item on my to-do list or an item on my goals and asking myself, do I really need that in my life? And if the answer is no, I might get rid of it. But if it's something I do want to do and it is going to add stress, then the answer is just trying to find a way to get through it and with as little extra pressure as possible, or with as little pressure as possible, or finding other things that I can do around my day and around my life to help relieve pressure so that I can get that task done. It sounds very obvious, but it can be very difficult to think about everything we do in life, good and bad, as adding or relieving pressure when there's such a hustle culture cult mentality around productivity and around being our best selves every single day. I have uninstalled like all my social medias. We have them blocked on our house-wide, like we have a special system set up above our router even to block like Reddit, Instagram, Twitter. Every social media is blocked now, because when I would get on Instagram, it was just all of these posts about being your best self and being super productive and craft the life you really want. And that surprisingly I realized was adding a lot of pressure in my life, because it made me feel like I wasn't enough every single day. And I hope you guys remember from the part 2 about the chemicals that cause all of these things to happen. You need to feel like you are enough at some point in your day, even if there's going to be more to do later. You have to find a way to bring your buddy serotonin back over here and say, I'm safe, I am enough, I am worthy of being here, I have done enough for now. And that might have to look like completely retrofitting your life so you can actually honestly answer that. That might have to look like slowly but steadily becoming stronger in certain areas of your life so that you can get enough done to encapsulate having done enough. But it does not look like putting more and more and more and more and more pressure on yourself and saying, oh, I'll feel like I'm enough. I'll feel like I'm worthy. I'll feel like I can feel completed with my day once I get good. Once I get good, then I can start backing down. Because that was me. That was me for the last several years. And that was me right up until this big, huge level 10 world-ending burnout that I experienced. I just thought, oh, if I want to have that feeling of satiety, if I want to have that feeling of accomplishment, if I want to have that feeling of satisfaction and enough and safety and like, yes, the task is done, I can let it off my shoulders, then I have to get good. That's what I thought this whole time, was I had to earn that. And the truth is, you have to build in, if you want to actually make progress in your life and not overwhelm yourself, you have to build your to-do list so that they're just big enough that you can start it and finish it and have that biochemical sense of completion, or else you will abuse the chemistry that your amazing brain uses to help you get things done until you just crash your body into the ground and have to stand up and hope that you didn't break too many things and you can still have the life you want. So yeah, it was a heckin' ordeal to go through, and I want to point out a few things that will hopefully clarify some of the science that I was talking about. When I talk about hitting this burnout phase, it's because so many things were going on tectonically under my life, but a big, huge part of it was because I did not believe in celebrating my accomplishments, and I did not believe in pausing from to-do list to to-do list to to-do list. I thought if I could check everything off the list, then that would be this enough of a feeling of accomplishment to carry me through the day and relieve all of that stress that I had built up. But it wasn't. I needed to actively work on bringing that stress down. And one of the biggest and most fascinating things I found out about bringing your buddy serotonin into your life is how important it is to celebrate your progress. And I don't mean in like cheap ways that don't actually have any impact on your life, like giving yourself a gold star sticker every time you get dressed for the day. That might be something that is a celebratory bit of progress for you. Like when I was deeply depressed in my early 20s, gold stars, that would have been enough to help me start building a healthier biochemistry in my life. What I mean by celebrating your progress is it just has to be, just like relieving the pressure, unique and important and real to you. And without that sense of celebration, you don't bring your buddy serotonin back into your life. And I think the biggest things that I did that caused me to burn out were I hit my 10-year life goal that I worked for 10 years of my life on, and I got to 10,000 YouTube videos on my main channel, and I didn't celebrate it. And I sacrificed a lot to get there. Sometimes trips to see family, often trips to see family, my own health and well-being, actually playing games I wanted to in interest of trying to play as many games as possible, or the games people were requesting. It took me 10 years to make 10,000 YouTube videos on my channel. And I hit that day and put my head right back down. I remember it was in November. I realized, okay, I just have passed officially 10,000 videos on my channel. The goal that I set for myself when I was itty bitty baby Siri almost 10 years ago. And I looked at the number and I thought, oh, it's just a number. And I put my head back down and I went to the next item on my to-do list. And I didn't celebrate at all. It was during, I had all these excuses too. Oh, it's right around Thanksgiving, you know, like we're gonna be busy with family then, and then it's gonna be Christmas and busy with family stuff again. I'll figure out something. I'm sure I'll come up with some way to celebrate it. And I never did. And I think that that was like adding 7 out of the 10 of pressure to my tectonic plates. Because it was 10 years of my life and these goals that I had. 10 years of anticipating this sense of release when I actually got there. And because I did not beforehand, during, or anywhere immediately afterward come up with a way to celebrate that for myself, other than a few cheesy like, good job, me, cool, all right, let's get moving, next thing on the list. I think that's the biggest factor in what caused me to crash and burn. So that is a big life lesson I now have in making sure to honor how much effort you put into something. If you are putting in a ton of effort into a project and you don't have pre-planned or someone helping you set up or some institutionalized way to celebrate completing it, then there's a great chance that you're going to have all of this pressure you will have built up in your life that does not have a release. And I'm going to carry that forward for forever, not just for myself, but for everybody in my life and everybody that I cherish. I am going to try to find ways to really celebrate the things that people have done, the accomplishments that they have reached, the milestones that they have achieved, in ways that I never have before, because I want to be that presence for someone that can help to relieve some of the pressure that may have been in their life from getting to that point. So I'm going to be like the world's biggest auntie, cheering on my nieces and nephews when they graduate from whatever they're going to be doing in life. And I'm going to take so much more care from now on to think in terms of equalizing the amount of pressure I add to my life with releasing that in some way. And the more I put behind a project, the bigger the project is, then I want to keep in mind that whatever quirky way means something to me, I want to make sure I have that release of that tension in my future. And I hope that's something, a lesson that I have bitterly paid for, that can go on to help some of you. Because I know in my life, personally, I never had examples of that. I got rewards in high school and my family wouldn't come to the ceremony, so I stopped going. I didn't have a high school graduation party. I didn't even go to high school graduation. I didn't walk. Same when I finished my community college degree. There always seemed to be more pressing issues at hand. There always seemed to be more things on the to-do list that needed to be done that didn't leave room or even didn't feel like I had done enough to earn a celebration for the effort I put in. But that's going to change from now on, even if it's going to feel a little artificial and weird and like I'm spoiling myself to say I put this much effort in, so there's going to be this much celebration to match it. It feels awkward for me, but it feels right, because I can tell it's going to be a better life as a result. And the last thing I want to say about these ways that pressure can get added into your life is what I was talking about in part 2 earlier. It's also related to mindset. Two people can have the exact same to-do list, the exact same life, but if the way that they perceive what they are doing and what they have or have not accomplished is different, one person might be completely fine and have no pressure, and the other person might break under that pressure. And I know for myself, my mindset was a huge part of always constantly adding pressure under the surface of my life. I could never do enough with my day. A huge part of that is because I am self-employed. I produce for my YouTube channel in a way that can be easily done with half an hour of sitting down and playing games, and all of those things sound like, oh, that's super duper easy to do on the surface. So mentally, I never gave myself credit for how much work it is. And I never gave myself credit for how much energy and effort and stress hormones went into producing what I did, because it was fun. It's that problem we talked about earlier, where even things that are fun and good times can still add pressure to your life, and if you don't acknowledge it, that doesn't mean the pressure went away. That means you're just ignoring it, and it adds that tectonic plate tension until... So the last thing I really want to try to get across is to be really honest with your mindset about when you are locked like this and you're telling yourself you don't understand, everything on my to-do list is critical and important and I have to do it or the world is going to catch on fire. Because that probably means you're caught in fight and flight mode. And that probably means that you're never going to get a sense of completion from doing your tasks because you're still looking for a lion when there's not one. And mindset, that's such a vague term. It's going to be something I'll probably leave for other talks, and I think it would probably be helpful, or maybe just interesting, or maybe just helpful for me to talk about what it's like to always be on and always have pressure to be on as a YouTube content creator. Because I think the kind of self-employed life I live now is actually much more common. Gig economy is what people call it now. And I actually think more and more people have to pick up gig economy just to make dots connect and ends meet. And the gig economy lifestyle is shared across whatever people are doing. If you are your own boss and you are your own bastion of responsibility, if you are the creator of the list and the arbiter of saying the list has been met, then you're part of that like gig economy umbrella, and the same kinds of pressures that I experience are probably going to be experienced by you. And I think that where people used to say, oh, get a job at the fast food industry, now we're going to be telling everyone, get a gig working Uber or doing something to like make a few bucks here and there, do some temporary content creation. So it's going to be an emotion and a feeling shared with everybody at some point, I think. But that to say, I'll have more conversations about the mindset and the mentality of what I've learned and what I've struggled with in the past of feeling like I have done enough. And I know that that is actually the biggest long-term and not just acute contributor to how I had all of that pressure in my life. And it's the thing that I struggle with the most, other than celebrating the big wins, other than celebrating the proportional to the effort put in. I know my biggest chronic thing is mindset and letting myself have done enough for the day. Because if you look at my comment section on the main channel, it will always be, where is this series? Where is that series? Start playing this, do this. I have emails every day from companies that want me to play these games. I have a sense of, I could better my family's life if I could earn more income, if I make more videos right now, so why am I reading a book instead? That is all mindset based and a whole nother conversation, but I just want to touch on that because it is my personal chronic addition of pressure into my life, and something that I'm going to be changing moving forward. Because when you live in that kind of mindset where you say, I could always do a little bit more, I could always do a little bit more, and it's not because you need to like kind of own up to your own strength and admit, yeah, I could be doing more. It's because you feel pressured to do more, that you need to do more in order to be good enough, in order to reach the place where you can feel safe. You have to have this huge list of to-dos and you have to do all these things. If you live that kind of mindset, then you're never going to invite your friend serotonin in, and you're never going to have that equalizing of pressure. And that's what I'm trying to change. But that is an active, evolving state of life that I don't have all the answers to yet. But I'm really excited to have my hands in the soil, digging through the weeds, trying to figure out what to make of this new space that I want to transform into a flourishing, beautiful garden, because I love metaphors. But that's where I'm at. And now the battery is going to dramatically die, so that's where we're going to end this conversation. It's long, it's rambling. I one day might try to condense all this into a better edited format, but I'm really relieved that I have gotten through it and that I have a new foundation for my whole life, and for kind of just putting out into the world a sense of understanding of where I am at, but also of how to deal with being able to add changes in productivity and do things with your life without risking blowing it all up. I hope this was helpful for some of you, or just gave you some insight into where the heck I've been. Maybe it's going to sound weak-willed to some people. Maybe it's going to sound like I just had to get good or work harder to others. I know I think I would have thought those things in the past, but maybe it will provide some much needed insight and permission for kindness and grace to other people's lives. And if that's what it can do, then it's 1,000% enough and everything I could hope for. And now I feel ready. I feel relieved, like I've put something down and accomplished something. And I have shared where I've been in the past few months, and I can let it go and move on and start creating something new. And I'm excited to bring you guys along with that journey too. So thank you so much for everything. I wouldn't be who I am without this place and without having met so many of you over the course of the last decade. And I can't wait to see where we go together. So stay curious, guys. Bye.